I've been sitting on this for a while now, trying to decide whether to share it, whether to even speak it out loud. You know that feeling when something just doesn't feel right, like an itch at the back of your mind that you can't quite scratch? That's what I've been dealing with for the past week. I keep telling myself I'm overreacting, letting my imagination get the better of me, but after what happened today, I can't ignore it any longer. I live at home with my parents. You know how it goes: chores, responsibilities, the usual grind of trying to help out around the house while balancing my own life. Washing dishes, vacuuming, taking out the trash. Mundane stuff. Last Monday was just like any other. Trash day in our neighborhood is every Tuesday and Thursday, and as usual, my dad gave me a reminder just as I was settling in to study late that night. I had completely forgotten about the bins, which isn't surprising considering I've been cramming for exams, barely sleeping. So there I was, half exhausted, dragging myself outside with the first bin. The driveway at my house is long, and our street? Dark as hell. The streetlights are spaced just far enough apart that patches of darkness stretch between them like yawning voids. Sometimes the lights flicker, and when they do, the shadows seem to writhe, like they're alive. I try not to think about it. I always hate taking the trash out at night. It's not rational, but something about the darkness, the isolation, makes my skin crawl. But, you know, it's just the trash. I reminded myself of that as I trudged back and forth, one bin at a time. It was on my third trip that I saw him. He was on the other side of the street, walking slowly, almost painfully so, like every step was a deliberate effort. He was an older guy, dressed in dark clothes, hands buried deep in his pockets. At first, I thought nothing of it. There's always someone out for a late-night walk, though not usually in this part of the neighborhood, not this late. But then, as I set the bin down at the curb, I felt it. His eyes on me. You know that prickling sensation you get when someone is watching you? It's like a cold breeze brushing the back of your neck. I glanced up, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. His stare was empty. Hollow. And yet, there was something about it, something that made my heart stutter in my chest. It wasn't just that he was watching me, he was studying me, like he was trying to memorize every detail, as if I was the one thing in his world that mattered. I turned away quickly, not wanting to give him any reason to think I cared or noticed. My gut told me to drop the bins and run inside, to lock the door and forget about the trash for the night. But I didn't. I told myself I was being ridiculous. What was he going to do, really? Maybe he was just a lonely guy walking off the cold, or maybe he didn't even realize he was staring. I went back for the next bin. But he was still there. Only now, he wasn't walking anymore. He had stopped, his figure barely illuminated by the weak streetlight. And still, he was staring. I swear I could feel his gaze burning into my skin, even though I refused to look at him again. I could sense it, that same unsettling weight. My heart was pounding, but I was determined. 2 more bins. I just had to get through 2 more. What could happen in the span of a few minutes? What could possibly go wrong in my own driveway, just a few yards from my front door? I wish I'd listened to my instincts. Every time I came back for another bin, he was still there, motionless, watching. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, ragged and uneven, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd gotten under my skin. Finally, I dragged the last bin to the curb, turned around, and he was gone. Just like that. No footsteps fading into the distance, no sound of shuffling away. Nothing. It was as if he had simply vanished, like he had never been there at all. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my ears, scanning the street, but there was no sign of him. I rushed inside and locked the door behind me, my hands trembling as I flipped the deadbolt. My dad was sitting on the couch, watching TV. When I told him about the guy, expecting him to shrug it off, he surprised me. His expression darkened. He told me, "Next time, don't be a hero. If something like that happens again, you run inside. Call me. Call the cops." For a few days, I managed to convince myself it was nothing. Just some strange guy, passing through. I told myself I was overthinking it, letting my anxiety get the better of me. But then today happened. I decided to take the trash out earlier this time, while it was still light. I didn't want to give myself a reason to get spooked again. My dad had dropped me off after school and was heading back out to pick up my little sister, so I thought I'd take care of it before they got back. The street was quiet. The daylight was fading, but it wasn't dark yet, just that eerie, in-between time where the shadows start to lengthen, and everything feels a little too still. As I stepped outside, something felt off. The air was too quiet, too thick. I can't explain it, but I felt it in my bones, that same prickling sense of being watched. I glanced around, telling myself I was just being paranoid, but then I saw it. A Chevy truck, moving down the street at a snail's pace. The windows were tinted, but I could see through just enough to make out the figures inside. The man in the passenger seat, him. It was the same guy from last week. His seat was reclined slightly, like he was trying to hide, but I recognized him instantly. My stomach dropped. There was someone else in the driver's seat, a second man, who seemed to notice me just as I noticed them. The second our eyes met, the truck accelerated, speeding down the street and out of sight before I could even think to react. I stood there, frozen, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run back inside. But I didn't move. I just stood there, staring after the truck as it disappeared around the corner, my heart pounding in my chest. Something is wrong. I know something is wrong. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's all in my head. But my gut is telling me otherwise, and I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Any suggestions what that should I do?